Tut Norberline would like to welcome you to Taking the Essence, Understanding Karma to Create the Future We Want with Eddie Peet. You can find Eddie in Brisbane, Australia, at the Langri Tangpa Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Shayla. Well, hi, everybody. So welcome along to this class on karma and how we can use it to make ourselves happier in this life and provide happiness in future lives. We're on the last class today, but so let's begin as we normally do by getting comfortable in the seat first of all, which means adjusting your posture, allowing your shoulders to relax and your back to be straight. And if you like, you can close your eyes or keep them open. And as you allow the body to breathe itself, become aware of the movements that take place when you inhale and exhale. By becoming aware of the movements that take place with the inhalation or exhalation of the breath, the mind itself is becoming more focused and the body more relaxed. And as the mind remains focused and the body is relaxing, imagine that in the space in front of you appears the Buddha, the Bodhisattvas, the meditational deities, and arahats, and the protectors. And imagine that surrounding you are all sentient beings. And you are leading every sentient being in refuge from suffering and its origins to bring about a long-lasting, stable, and permanent release from the origins of suffering, bringing us into a state of peace. So now, Miffy, would you like to just lead us through these the refuge prayer, please?
Yep. So can you push? Oh, there we are. So when we do the first few recitations, the blissful white clarifying light flows through you and all the surrounding sentient beings, purifying all negativities and afflictions. And then after the first few, then it changes to golden light, where we absorb all of the qualities, and all the enlightened qualities flow into us in the form of golden light, and motivating especially that we take refuge for all the sentient beings that can't take refuge at the moment, and taking refuge like we are the designated practitioners, and that remembering that it's refuge not just from the really obvious and traumatic sufferings of samsara, but refuge from the ups and downs and the continuous cycle, and refuge from the all-pervasive suffering that attracts more suffering and more difficulties, just like iron filings to a magnet. So this really deep sense of refuge. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings.
Now recollect the four immeasurable thoughts of compassion, love, joy, and equanimity, and decide to establish all beings in those states. Again, feel the light of nectar washing over you and over all beings who surround you. And feel that you and others now have the four immeasurable thoughts within your mind stream. And being in front of the refuge field, decide to prostrate, make offerings, and confess all negativities. So join with me, reciting. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. And now to rid ourselves of the final vestiges of clinging to the sense of I and the merit and the goal, we can make an offering of a mandala to the field of refuge in front of us. So reciting with me. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratta Mandala Kamnarataya. The mandala has been released. It's accepted by the Buddha, and he smiles at us with delight. And we look up into his eyes. We see that smile and we feel accepted and at ease. And then an emanation leaves the heart of the Buddha and moves through space to come and abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. This emanation of light descends, entering the crown of your head, moving down through your body to rest at the level of your heart. The light expands, filling your body and mind. It goes out through the pores of your skin to fill all of space. There's no difference in your inner state and what's called the outer world. All ideas of self and other have vanished. You're resting in this state, except that you've brought about the enlightenment of all living beings. When the lights begin to withdraw from the 10 directions of space, they re-enter your heart. You feel yourself embodied, sitting on your seat. You're breathing normally and naturally. And you accept that this has taken place on the level of imagination and is laid upon your mind stream a potential to become fully awake and to liberate all sentient beings. And you breathe in deeply through your nostrils, and you exhale through your mouth, and you allow your eyes to flutter open and bring yourself to awareness on your seat in front of the screen. So again, welcome everybody, and we'll just briefly go over what we've covered in the last 4 weeks. So we looked at what karma is. We know in general it's called an action, but in particular, it's a volitional action. It's intention itself. And every action has substantial and cooperative causes. We can differentiate these two types of causes. Substantial causes turn into the effects, whereas cooperative causes don't. We looked at this law of karma, and it's basically what, it's like they say in the Bible, you sow, you reap what you sow. That's basically the law of karma. And that karma itself has a number of different characteristics. So faith in the law of karma and its results requires us to sort of understand these 4 principal aspects of karma. So happiness always comes from virtue and never non-virtue. And suffering always comes from non-virtue and never virtue. So that's what's certain about karma. Secondly, a small action can bring large results in the same way that a tiny seed can grow into a huge tree. So karma increases. Thirdly, if we don't create the cause, we won't experience the result. And lastly, the karmic seeds do not get lost. So unless we impede them in some way or destroy them, they will eventually ripen into their effects. And these 4 apply to both virtuous and non-virtuous paths of action. Over about 2 to 3 of the weeks, we looked at the different types of actions and how they're composed of parts and what those parts are. Sometimes they're described as they have 3 parts, sometimes 4, 5, even go up to 6. And lastly, we looked at karma and its relationship to the true origins of suffering. Now today, we're going to be looking at the process of purification. In other words, we're learning how to stop negative karma from ripening and producing its suffering results. But there are a number of different remedies, and the purification, the path of purification is made up of these 4 parts. We can also see what else we can do when we're not actually in meditation sessions. The practices of generating more merit and rejoicing. And lastly, the importance of patience. So the material I've relied upon are these books plus a few others. You can see up on the corner here, Vajrasattva Meditation and Illustrated Guide, and that's exactly what it is. It's a very great, very good pictures of the process of purification and how you can use Vajrasattva as the basis for purification. Coming down on the left-hand side, we have the everlasting rain of nectar. This is the practice of the 35 Buddhas, and there's a purification practice within that. Then below that is the practice of the Medicine Buddha. Again, Medicine Buddha also has purification practices in it. These other 3 books, Steps on the Path to Enlightenment, the large one by Geshe Sopa, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice, and Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. They're really more about the process, and they go into it in some depth. But yeah, it's very easy to read and understand what's going on. Another book I found very useful, it's not up there, but maybe I can show it to you and hold it up. It's called Becoming Vajrasattva. And this was by, it's been out for a few years, but it's by Lama Yeshe. And there's a particular part that I want to read out to you. I find it so important and useful. It really makes the practice come alive and also helps with a sort of faulty explanation that's been given in the past. Let's start off by looking at a quote. So the Buddha says, Maitreya, when a bodhisattva, a great being, possesses these 4 teachings, non-virtuous actions that are performed and accumulated will be overcome. What are these 4? They are the power of remorse, the power of the antidote, the power of turning away from faults, and the power of the basis. And this comes from a sutra called Showing the 4 Dharmas. And our class is basically focused around these 4. Remember last week we talked about how non-virtuous actions that are performed and accumulated, so they produce their result. Now, last week we looked at how sometimes actions can be performed and not accumulated, or not performed and accumulated, and so forth. We went through those 4 different positions last week. So let's have a look now at the beginning of these 4 opponent powers. So first is called the power of release, also called the power of eradication. Second, power of the remedy, applying antidotes or remedies to our unskillful actions that we've done in the past. The restraint, whereby we stop ourselves from engaging in these practices, the unfortunate and unskillful actions again, also called turning away from faults. And refuge, which is the foundation or basis for the practice. Now, these 4, well, I've written the 1, 2, 3, 4. The order can be changed, and often is. So when you come along to the different texts, you'll see sometimes it'll start off at refuge, but sometimes it finishes with refuge. So I just want to point that out to you now. And the way that I'm going to present it, first of all, is just how to show you how each of these opponent powers works against the 4 parts of the action, the unskillful action. But then later on, when we go through it again, the order will be changed again. So when it comes to order, just look at the practice that you actually, if you have a sadhana practice that you go through, just do it that way. Other times when you're just doing the 4 opponent powers yourself without using the deity or the 35 Buddhas or something like that, find out what sits best with you. Because oftentimes it's the power of what they call release or regret that pops up first. You realize, oh my gosh, I've done something unskillful. And you know of the consequences. So immediately you have this power, you want to release the potential of that suffering affecting you. And so oftentimes it starts off with release or regret. Now, of these 4 here, the 2 most important and most powerful are the release and the restraint. The stronger the sense of eradication, release, regret is, the stronger the sense of restraint will be. It's really important to get this first one right. Kyabje Zopa says, if you practice these 4 powers to counteract negative karma, there is no non-virtuous action that cannot be purified. Even if you have committed great negative actions, if you have enough time and energy to apply these opponent powers seriously and intensively, even those grave negative potentials can be destroyed completely. It says, and even if you are not able to destroy a karmic potential from the root, you can at least suppress it, so it's not able to bring its result soon. Or else you can mitigate it, so its result is very mild. So all these, so when the result becomes mild, it's still called purification, because the actual full result has not taken place. So purification also has a sort of, what would you call it? Spectrum. It's on a spectrum. Just from complete release to partial release to less suffering, suffering immediately, all these sort of funny ways of looking at it. But it's all called purification. So what we'll do now is we'll go through each of them. And I want to show you, first of all, like how they actually relate to an action, and then go through each of them individually. Miffy, you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I was just thinking. The other night, I think me and Laura, when we went out, we had a very small purification result, because she'd been talking about how this year she's supposed to astrologically be very careful driving. And as she's talking about it and we're at the lights, there's this bang. And I thought her car had stopped, but actually someone had crashed into us behind us. And it was like having an accident without having to have the accident. And because we were stationary, and then managed to pull over, and the guy was really nice, and everything went really, really smoothly. So what could have been terrible happened in the best possible way, and we weren't even late for the show. It was just, I don't even know how that happened. Car wasn't damaged, nothing.
Yeah, so this, so I like that. It's a pretty good example. Okay, so let's have a look now at these 4 opponent powers, and then how they relate to the unskillful actions that we've done in the past. So here we've got these 4 parts, right? And you can see here I've put up a number of different words that relate to these 4 opponent powers. And I'll do this again a few times again too. And I'd probably suggest you, like, if you like, write them down, because sometimes you can use the word in a particular instance and it's very good and useful, and then you'll try it again and it's not so, then it requires a different word. So you just got to find this out through trial and error. So here we see reliance, meaning the refuge, which is the foundation. This is often called, you can take your refuge here in Vajrasattva, the 3 jewels, which should also include bodhicitta. And then here we have the actions. So when we carry out an action, the basis is the object or the sentient being acted upon. And the reliance opposes that basis. In fact, reliance is often called the basis itself. So we have a basis in the 4 opponent powers, and we have a basis in the 4 parts of the action. And the second is this resolve or restraint, the turning away, works against the attitude that you had when you committed the negative action. And this attitude is made up of these 3 parts. So you have to correctly discern the basis. There's got to be an affliction in place, and there's a motivation for acting.
What does correctly discern the basis mean?
Well, if you want to hurt Gary, but you hurt Miffy, you haven't, you've missed the mark, sort of thing. Or if you wanted to steal $100, but you could only take 10, it's not correctly done. The remedy works against the performance of the action. And finally, the having remorse works against the culmination of the action. So it's quite nice, isn't it? Don't you think? When you can actually see how, like I said before, actions are composed of parts. The purification practice is made up of parts. In fact, anything that exists has parts. And here you can see the direct, sort of correlation between them, how each one works to weaken the other one. Sometimes what they bring out is the weakening of the effect, the final effect. So now a similar type slide, but now I want to bring into it the effects, how these work against the effects. So here we have our 4 parts of the action again. Then we start off with the basis, there's an attitude, it's performed, and then the action is finished. And then we had an opponent power for each of these. And what the opponent power is doing is changing the future effect. So when we're looking at purification practices, there's one thing we know for sure, right? We've been unskillful in the past. We know if we want to modify the effect of that, we have to do something in the present. What we do in the present affects our future. So these effects are the effects of the future that we wish to modify, adjust, or not experience because they're negative and they're going to produce suffering. So one of the most important things when you look at karma and the purification of it is to look at the effects. Because you're sort of going, look, I don't want to have those effects. They're going to make life very, very difficult for me. So you say, okay, if I don't want to have those effects, we know the effects come from the causes, which are all on the action side, stuff done in the past, and I've got to do something in the present. We use their 4 opponent powers.
Eddie, are you going to go into why the opponent power purifies that particular type of effect?
Well, think about it. I think it's so obvious. That's the idea of like knowing how the action is made up of, and then you can see, just going through the power of the effect. let's take the first one. So an action is finished, right? Suppose you set out to steal something and you did steal it. And so you're happy, you took something that wasn't given, you got it, right? It's woohoo, you got it. Suddenly you realize, you get taught about karma and you go, oh my gosh, the effect of this is to have an experience similar to what I did. What would that mean?
Having your stuff stolen?
That's right. So I'm going to have my stuff stolen. That's the experience similar to what I've done. What's going to stop that? Having remorse for stealing. Right? Because you know, oh my God, the effect in the future is a loss of my capital, a loss of my property, a loss of my goods. So this is how we sort of view something like this. When I went through it, managed to pull these things out, put it up like this, it's like, oh my God. It's like, this is such a powerful, good thing to know of. Like this one down here, the attitude, right? So the attitude of stealing, it's a sort of poverty mentality, isn't it? Perhaps I don't have enough, I want more. Or because I haven't got it, I want it. And I want it right now. I'm not going to bother asking anybody about it. I'm going to just take it. So what's the effect is behavior similar to that in the future. So what would that mean? We would just keep taking things. We would keep engaging in stealing and taking things that weren't freely given to us in the present. So you've got to resolve to stop that. You go, oh my gosh, okay. Then I have to resolve myself to not take things that are not freely given.
So in a way that when you resolve to not do it, that has an effect a lot longer than just this current instance, but it changes the whole karmic result of having that behavior in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, if you say to yourself today, oh my God, like what this means, you look at the news and you see so many people in poverty. You go, well, that's an experience similar to the cause. And these poor people in poverty, they can't often ask for things. They might have to just take them. So you just keep the cycle moving. So if you see that you've done things like it, you go, oh, I don't want anything like that. You decide not to take anything that's not freely given. That goes on. We decided. And actually, when we come to this later, I was to go through each one. There's a really great term for this resolve that Lama Yeshe uses. So of course it carries on, doesn't it, from moment to moment to moment, especially if you've made the vow not to take what has not been freely given. It's very powerful. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go through each of these singly. So the first being, of course, remorse, but also I've put up here called the power of release, and I'll explain it to you very shortly. Now, when we use the word remorse, it's very good in this way, right? To have the feeling of remorse, like I said, we've got to go into the future. To look at, well, what are the three effects of this? Which was, well, actually there's four, where here you've got the experiences similar to the cause, there's the throwing karma, there's behavior similar to the cause, and there's the fruition and environmental effect. And all of these are rooted in suffering and produce more suffering. So here are some of the different terms for the power of remorse or the power of release. Sometimes it's called the power of repudiation, the power of regret, uprooting, and eradication. So it's a strong attitude of aversion, renunciation, and opposition directed towards the negative karmas you created in the past. And it says, if you lack this first power, the remaining three powers will be weak and ineffective. In fact, in Shantideva's engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, there's that chapter on, it's chapter 2, talks about really focusing on the power of purification. And there he says, one of the things he says, if you were to die at this very moment, then the seeds of the negativities, when we finish an action, it leaves a seed. They have the power to produce all sorts of suffering for yourself. You know, he says, His Holiness says, misdeeds bring frightening results in this and future lives. So it's no time to be complacent. Now, so sometimes you might have read or heard that at the time of death, one of the 5 powers is to use the power of regret, isn't it? But now, so when I heard that, I just went, I don't think that's a good idea at all. And I'm running through my mind and just going, shit, no. Can anybody see what my concern might be?
You might die in the middle of thinking all the bad things you've done.
Yeah, exactly, Sue. That was the thing. So the mind's focused on all the negativity, the regret of the wrong. So you have regret, but the mind's really focused on what you've done. But so that's a sort of a depressive type of mind. It's focused on what's negative. So exactly, Sue. So that was my concern, seeing like using this power. At that time, it's such an important time. So today, this is what I read. Right? And so this is from Lama Yeshe's Becoming the Vajrasattva, the Tantric Path of Purification. And
Just Eddie, just stop the screen share while you're reading it out, so we can see your face.
what's particularly good about this book is the section at the very beginning where they talk. He says it's why and how we purify. And then the next section is on taking refuge. But in this here, why and how we purify, it very briefly talks about each of these 4 opponent powers. And this is what he says. And here, this power is, he's named it the second power. And that's because we're doing it in terms of Vajrasattva practice. Now, this power, the power of release, is sometimes called the power of regret. But this is misleading. For this power derives from wisdom, not from some kind of emotional sorrow or guilt. Such feelings actually reinforce our negative propensities. Think instead of a person who suddenly realizes that he has just swallowed poison. He wants to take the antidote right away. The power of release is the wisdom that understands the negative repercussions of unwholesome actions so well that the moment you become aware that you have created a negative action, you want to purify it immediately. But so for me, that has quite a different take on the idea of looking at the unskillful actions you've done in the past and regretting them. It's the same sort of thing if I'd eaten poison, I wouldn't be sitting there regretting that I've eaten poison. I'd be wanting to get it out, right? I'd be to the sink, to the fridge, get the milk, get the water. What do I do? What do I do?
Yeah, it's a real difference in which direction you're looking, and it makes a huge difference then in how much energy we have to do something about it.
Yeah, that's it. So it's also, so if you use it at the end, you want to use it in terms of release.
Release.
And especially times at the end of your life. Use the word release.
Eddie, I also thought it was really interesting that Lama Yeshe said about how it's not some emotional kind of, overwhelming feeling, because you can get really stuck on that emotional regret, replaying the thing again and again and going, oh no, and that's not really helpful.
And that's the natural thing for the mind to do. You know, is to sort of, when it's the negative things, is to focus on it and to start to replay. And then you get a whole emotional, you get the emotional content of what you're imagining, even though it took place in the past. And what do you call it? When you come together, you get that
Cognitive fusion.
Cognitive fusion. And so this is like we talked about, this emotion, the feeling, emotional tones. But this is not so bad, I think, when you begin, I think, okay, this was really unskillful action. So remember here too, we're looking at the actions, not at ourselves as the person who performed the action. It's the action, the part of the action that's really important here, and what we're bringing to it. And we're bringing this part to it because we know the long-term effect. It's like it hasn't happened here, but it's going to happen later. Yeah, it's like that sort of thing. Imagine that you'd either intentionally or unintentionally committed a crime. And you find yourself in court. And your lawyer says to you, all you have to do is acknowledge what you've done and say sorry. And you'll walk out of here. But if you don't, the judge and the jury are going to look at you and say, oh, this is the person that has, what do you call it? No regret. And
no remorse.
No remorse.
Hmm.
So this person should go to jail. Now, suppose you know that, all right? And you go, oh yeah, I don't have any remorse. I'm going to go to jail. Yeah. Do you want to go to jail? If you say no, well, we'll just do this other thing. Right? Bring it to the moment of regret. It's just
Eddie,
like
that's what happens though with remorse, because it's such, in the short term, it's such a uncomfortable feeling. We just don't want to feel it. We kind of try and justify things to ourselves or pretend it didn't happen. But if we know that there's this incredible benefit for the remorse, it's worth going through.
The other thing about that too, is like we're focusing on ourselves and not the action.
Which is so easy to say, but so easy to forget.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So we have this, again, that's really coming through our ignorance of karmic cause and effect and our ignorance of actually how we exist. So it's funny, isn't it? If you go to a party, you go anywhere, people say, what do you do? And you say, I am the postman, I am this, I am that. And again, we fuse our actions with ourselves. So we speak to ourselves unskillfully and unskillfully to others. So here, like I said, we're really looking at the actions themselves. Like we are imputed to the action, but we are not the action. Okay, I'll go back now to.
Was there someone else who had a question that we're gonna?
No, I just had a comment.
Sure.
And when you said, Eddie, that regret, it can lead to a wisdom because you're thinking about the long-term effect.
Sure.
It reminded me of something I heard about shame. Like usually we think that's bad, but because we're social animals or like social, we're social beings. Shame is a mechanism to, like, when you hurt someone or you hurt yourself, like there's the sense of shame in that. So to have that sense of conscience, like, and feel that shame, that can actually be a good thing, but we don't see it like that. We are like, oh, this is negative, and then we blame ourselves for that. So I think we just have to look at both sides of the coin. So I just want to thank you for noting that about regret.
This is what happened to me. I did not want to feel shameful for the things that I'd done in the past. But then when I came to Buddha Dharma and saw that shame was actually a positive virtuous, positive mental factor, I sort of reflected, that's what was going on. It just felt so uncomfortable. And I thought, no, I don't want to feel that bad. But actually, it's like you say, it's meant to feel like that. It's like telling you something good. It just feels a little uncomfortable. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look now. We'll go on. And yep, that's right. They're seen as positive mental factors, aren't they? From Dani. Okay, so this is the most important one. And it really leads to the third one. So now we come to the second here in the presentation. It's just called the remedy. It's really about the different types of antidotes you can bring to the unskillful actions that you've done in the past. Now, there are 6 here, so I'm just going to briefly go through all 6 of them. But let's see that, in fact, it's any virtuous act. So any is the clue. Right? Performed for the purpose of purification. This is what constitutes the opponent force. So some of them are much more powerful than others. I remember a young man that used to come to the center here. He had a lot of difficulties with desirous attachment, and I don't think he used these 4 opponent powers very skillfully, because it actually didn't diminish the suffering of desirous attachment. So when you use opponent powers, have a think about it. I mean, some are easier to do than others. If you really want to make changes to your life, like in the present, to have a really good, strong effect into the future, sometimes it's very good to find, what am I actually doing here that's so unskillful in producing suffering? And what's its direct antidote? Although I have 6 here I could do, some of them are going to be stronger than others. So depend upon your capacity, your capability, what you understand and know. You make a choice. So Shantideva puts up these 6 remedies. They are to depend upon the sutras, recite them, study them, contemplate them, and so forth. Emptiness is the one that really gets at it, but you've got to have very good concentration to do that well. Nevertheless, just even thinking, as they say, that the phenomena lacks any true existence, any inherent existence, is very powerful. In other words, what you've done does not exist objectively. Recitation on different mantras, the names of the Buddhas, your teacher, and so forth. When we talk about worship here, we're talking about making Buddha statues, making satsas, perhaps paintings, mandalas, and so forth. The images, again, here we're making offerings to the images. And depends upon the names. So we can recite the names of the Buddha, for example, or 35 Buddhas, the mantras, and so forth. So this is Shantideva's way of putting it. And so what we'll do is go through each of these in a bit more detail. So first is the profound sutras. So here are some of the different things you can do. You can either receive the oral transmission of sutras. So this, I think now, even online now, you can get the oral transmission of some of these sutras.
Yeah, FPMT has a huge amount of oral transmission of the sutras from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and they go over various episodes, so you can do a little bit each day.
Okay.
And the transmission just means listening. You don't have to say along, but it's just it goes in through listening.
Yeah, thank you, Miffy. The other thing you can do is read them. So we have the very short Heart Sutra. We have the Diamond Cutter Sutra. There's a sutra on the 4 Noble Truths. They're all very, very short. It won't take much for you. to recite it or to read it. And of course, try to retain the meaning of them would be even better. Explain them or to praise them. This is one of the remedies, one of the antidotes. The second, of course, as I said before, was emptiness itself. So the two ways we can comprehend a reality in which there is no self, meaning no inherent existence, is conceptually or perceptually. I'd imagine for most of us, if not all of us, it'll be conceptually. But that's still possible. We can still do that. We can realize through our analysis that the unskillful actions we've done in the past have no objective existence, that their existence depends upon name and language and the mind, a whole lot of different factors. So the unskillful things we've done aren't like sitting out there in space waiting to land on us. This is interesting, to comprehend the reality which is luminously clear. So what they're talking about here is the mind itself. Like if we've created any type of negative action, like where's it going to exist? It has to exist dependently. On what? Well, the mind. Okay, let's have a look into the mind for where this negative, unskillful potential for suffering exists. When you do, it's unfindable. It's not like in there. So these two sort of go together. Conviction, the mind is primordially pure. Again, from the book Samsara, Nirvana, and Buddha Nature. If you don't have that book, try and get it. This is where all this information about the mind being primordially pure is in there, and it's easy to understand. What we need to do is retain what we understand and put it to the test ourselves. Lastly, to have confidence and conviction that emptiness is the ultimate mode of being. So when we look for ourselves, when we look for the unskillful action we've done, we look for the result of what we're doing, none of it is findable. None of it has any intrinsic existence. It all exists dependently upon name and consciousness. So the third being recitation. So here, as you know, most of you will be familiar with the Vajrasattva mantra, Tara's name, medicine Buddha, and so forth. And there's also the confession to the 35 Buddhas. So the real important part here, of course, is the names are the purifying factor, but it's very important, I think, also to read the prayer that comes with it. So you actually understand, not only do I want to purify this particular thing that I'm aware of, it's a lot of other things that also need purification. So they're all mentioned in that confession prayer.
And Eddie, is there, recitation means reading out loud, doesn't it?
So relying on recitation, reciting.
I was just thinking, recitation is different from just reading, where you can do it silently. And I remember Corey saying that if we actually say the things out loud, it has a much stronger effect on us than just reading, because it's an action as well as kind of just an input.
It's the same when we make the confession in the first one, It's like, well, we'll try it out. Try to sit there thinking about what you've done unskillfully, and then go ahead and do the practice, and then stop, and then say it out aloud. There's a big difference, right? Yeah, so if you can bring your verbal skills to it, there's just, you're not sitting there in front of your father and mother saying all this. You're sitting there probably and with the idea that all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are present, and I want them to hear what I've got to say. I understand they know my mind, but I need to speak it. I need to say what I've done.
And even, Eddie, when if we recite sutras, then that has this incredible benefit, not just for ourselves, but it blesses the whole environment. So it's especially good if you've got aggressive neighbors, or if there's fighting in the neighborhood, to actually recite those sutras or those names out loud, then changes the immediate environment as well.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Excuse me,
Yes,
Eddie.
yes, Sue?
With the recitation of the 35 Buddhas, when you're saying their names, is it also important to bring the intention of like thinking of their qualities as well, like of an enlightened being? Do you have to?
Well, if you know of them and you can do it, yeah, it makes it stronger and more effective.
Is there anything else that you can do at that stage? Like just thinking of the things that a Buddha is free from fear, can free others from fear. And
the major thing is like to think that they're present, to feel as if they're present. So if you get, everything should be done like to bring about that experience. So if you like to say, so if you're bringing the qualities, whatever you can bring of your prior knowledge of study to this experience of that they are present and they embody everything that I know about them.
Thank you.
That's the thing. Okay, now we come to this. Next one is practice of worship. And basically, you make offerings to images of the Buddha, make offerings to stupas, offer clothing or brocade to a statue of the Buddha, offer gold leaf, offer water, offer fruit. Probably one of the simplest things you can do. The next one is to create representations of the holy body, speech, and mind. So these here are a few of the satsas that our students have painted and that we have in our library and also in our meditation dogma. This is a way of like showing respect to the qualities of the Buddha.
Eddie, I remember Venerable Sering saying you offer paint or you offer gold to the holy images. It's such a nice way of thinking about it, because it's not about whether you're good at painting or not, but it's about making an offering.
Yeah. And it's the same like when you use your speech. When you recite the mantras or you recite the sutra, you're making a verbal offering here, which is like, as Miffy pointed out before, I think that's why it's very important and very good that you actually say it. Because it's like, you're just like sitting there with your offering and I'm not saying a word. It's like, yeah, it could be a bit better than that. Okay, the next one is the names. So recite the names or the mantras of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So this is related to the third method, relying on recitation, and it refers to reciting, hearing, and remembering the names of the Buddhas and the great Bodhisattvas. So many, and here they talk about how powerful even reciting the Amani Pimi Hum mantra, the mantra of Avalokiteshvara. So in Tibet, it's very, very common. Everyone knows that mantra. Okay, so let's have a look now. So these are our 6 remedies. So now we come back to the next power.
I have a question on the 6 remedies.
Yeah.
It seems like there's 2 of speech, 2 of mind, and 2 of body. Is that correct to think of it like that? In a way?
Oh, that's not a bad way of thinking about it. I hadn't noticed that, but that's a good thing to notice. It may well be. Yeah. So you could say probably one is more focused on the body and one more focused on speech. Yeah. So this is the third power here. So what it's saying is you have to have an attitude of strong conviction not to commit the unwholesome behavior in the future. So this is also called the power of the promise, the power of, Lama usually calls it indestructible determination. A determination to never again do this. And this determination is indestructible. He also calls it the decisive commitment. Committing decisively to stop, to not do it. Other terms are a resolution and turning away.
I like resolution.
Yeah,
That's
you
great.
resolve. So again, developing this attitude properly depends on the strength and conviction of the first power. So once again, I think that first power has got a great deal of strength by confessing aloud, saying what it is that you regret. So here from His Holiness the Dalai Lama from Foundation of Buddhist Practice, on page 305, he says, this fortifies your inner strength to oppose habitual destructive ways of thinking and acting and to change your ways. It's like making New Year's resolutions, only you have to keep this one. You should keep it. If you cannot resolve to abandon certain actions forever, resolve to avoid them for a certain period of time. And during that time, be very conscientious to avoid the action. This will give you confidence, and then you can extend the time a little more. Geshe Sopa says, the third power is the resolve to avoid performing unwholesome actions in the future. Having understood the disadvantages of collecting negative karma, you make a decisive commitment to restrain yourself from doing that non-virtuous action. This resolve is rooted in your understanding of the consequences of each of these harmful actions. And it leads to a very concentrated determination to avoid them in the future. Sometimes this resolution is even expressed out loud in words. When you're making this kind of confession, if the words come from deep in the heart, if you're thinking with sincere regret about your actions and genuinely committing to avoid them in the future, that's the real confession. However, if you respond by saying the right things, but in your heart there is no real remorse and no genuine resolve, then your confession is nothing but words. So saying it aloud, I think, would help you have genuine remorse and a genuine resolve. And now we come to the fourth one here, but like I said, sometimes this could be the first. This is also known as the support, the basis, and the foundation. And so these two is often in terms of when we commit unskillful, negative, suffering-producing actions, it'll either be against holy beings or sentient beings. So with sentient beings, we use bodhicitta. With the holy beings, it's the three jewels of refuge. The three jewels of refuge are the first support of your practice of purification. The second is meditation on bodhicitta. Bodhicitta means wanting to attain the highest goal of Buddhahood in order to help other sentient beings. You want to help them because you see how they are trapped in a seemingly endless cycle of misery. So you can see how it works, isn't it? Like you harm sentient beings and now you work for their benefit. That's the opponent. So that there's a sort of a clash in there between mental attitudes and actions. One, you can't have both. You can't do both. You know, one opposes the other. Now, like I said before, so when we create our unskillful actions, let's say, negativities can be purified with the 4 opponent powers, the material that we've just gone through. So negativities are things like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, harsh speech, idle speech, divisive speech, lying, having malice, envy, and wrong views, and a whole lot of other things too. So that's one way of creating a negativity. And these are all purified with the 4 opponent powers, but there's other ways we create potential for future suffering. And that is when we make promises and vows that we either damage or break. And so, for instance, we might have taken a vow to not eat before, or not eat after midday. But then we do. So that's not necessarily purified by the 4 opponent powers. That's a different type of problem with the crew. But they have to be purified in a ritual that conforms with how the vow was taken. Right? So if we've taken bodhisattva vows, then we need to, and we find, oh, I've damaged this vow, I've created a downfall in relationship to it. To purify that, you've got to do it in relationship to how this vow was taken, which is described in the text anyway. Right? So just using the 4 opponent powers is not going to do it. You need to incorporate the 4 opponent powers with how the vow was taken. And it's the same sort of thing with highest yoga tantra or the tantras. Right? If you damage the vows, committed downfalls and so forth, you need to find it's not, you do more than the 4 opponent powers. So when we use the 4 opponent powers repeatedly, there are signs of success. And they often come out in dreams, or like Miffy's example, you might get your car just whoop. So let's have a look at these. So what we wish to do, of course, is to avoid the future result. So ways of doing that is when we actually do the purification practice, don't ever walk away from it with some sort of doubt about what you've done. Like I said, so one way of helping you with this is go, an action is made up of these 4 parts. I did this, 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 and this. This is how I did them. Here are the 4 opponents for each of them. Does this make sense to me? I hope it does, like it should do. And then you go, okay, so I've just got to acknowledge it's going to produce future suffering for me and decide I'm not going to do it. If it's just for today, if it's just for an hour. In that hour, I will not be doing that unskillful action that I've done before. And finally, like I said before, you cannot, it's impossible. Even the Buddha was unable to do this. Right? You will not find any natural existence of you purifying through confession. Just ask yourself, am I the body? You go, no. Am I the mind? No. Am I both of them? Well, I can't be because I'm not either of them singly, so I'm not both of them. Am I in here somewhere? No. How do I exist then? take the confession. It took to take the problem. It took place in the past. Past is gone. If that action existed, how would it have to exist from the past to now to produce the future result? So the deeds themselves have no natural existence. They exist in dependence upon your recollection of them, the naming of them, so forth, the mind. And the action of purification also says, so however you use the term natural existence rather than inherent existence or objective existence or any of those other terms. Because this is how we think, they're naturally, they're this natural. But in fact, they don't exist naturally. They exist dependently. So always recollecting this material that you understand of how everything is naturally empty. That's what you'd say for sure. And being naturally empty, they naturally have no objective existence or natural existence. That's what they don't have. So the other day I heard in my DB study, there was a lovely line there with Kyabje Rinpoche said that the root of the Buddha's teaching is compassion. Then he said, that sometimes the teacher will say, the root of the teaching is compassion empty compassion. Right? Because everything is empty. If it exists, it is empty of intrinsic existence. But this is very, very easy to forget when you just say, the word itself, like compassion or evil or me. Right? The empty just sort of drops off, and just the appearance is left, and it's got a true, the appearance looks real. So we start relating to it as if it's really existent. Now, there is one other terrific, very, very valuable mental factor that's always at our fingertips. And it's incredibly important and very, very helpful. And this mental factor is called patience. But I've jumped ahead. Patience comes after this, so please be patient. Rejoicing is such a tremendous way to increase merit and happiness. So rejoice, please, in all the good that you do yourself, in the virtue of your teacher and every other holy being, and especially in the virtue of ordinary beings. Last night, Niffy and I watched two very good shows on television, and both of them were just about the virtue of ordinary beings and how much joy they brought to ordinary people. And I'll say to you, it's so easy to forget the decency and the goodness of ordinary people.
Yeah, Eddie, it's like the kindness of ordinary people, because it's not newsworthy, but I mean, it is everywhere, and it's astonishing each time because, there's no added incentive in there. It's just a natural thing that comes out.
Yeah. The people have this natural goodness.
I just love how exactly in the middle of the word rejoice is the word joy. So I just love that.
That's it. That's right. And I did a class the other day on joy, and it's like it's incredible, isn't it? Like it's there, always with us as a natural resource, and how easy it is to forget it. So one of the ways of generating joy is through gratitude. Just be grateful that you're alive. Like it's very easy to forget. that you're a human being with this opportunity to engage in the spiritual path and bring freedom to yourself and every other living being. And in particular, I like this one, that your life has meaning and purpose. We've found the meaning to our lives. We've given it purpose. These are things to be grateful for, because so many people don't have these. You know, we know people die every day. I think every second is somebody dying. So few people have leisure and opportunity, and so few people have been able to give their life meaning and purpose. But we have. And I remember there's a lovely story about the Buddha giving a teaching to one of the kings. And the king would say, look, I'm really busy. I don't have time to do all these sadhanas and practice. And he said, oh, gratitude. Practice gratitude and rejoice in your country and the virtue of your countrymen and the fact that you are a king who's engaging in the practice of Dharma. We take it and go, that's what I can do for myself. I can do, I'm not we are in ways, we've joined the royal lineage, haven't we? And so these are very simple ways to make a spiritual journey easier and joyful. And that's it. So that's a really good side. The other is to be patient, to have patience. Now we want to have patience. We need to, we have patience, but we've got to engage in practicing being patient people. But why? To protect the virtue we've already created. Because all harms come to us because we have created the causes for it. So our real enemy is our own anger. So anger destroys virtue and creates more harm for ourselves in the present and the future. So we don't, we don't wish to experience that taking place. Not only do we harm ourselves, we harm our families, our loved ones, our neighbors, the world. So patience is of great importance. As Geshe Soka says, we constantly create the causes for our own harm. Our real enemy is our own anger. And as soon as anger arises, the enemy is there. So if you wish to control this internal enemy, you need to be calm and compassionate.
Eddie, there was just something about patience that struck me. On the news, we just had an Australian win the Giro d'Italia, how many 3,500 kilometre bike race. And the thing that he said about how he won it was he had to have patience. And it's so weird. You're trying to win a race and the main important thing is to have patience. And it's like, even if you want something, you can't go at it half-baked. You've got to have a plan and hold back and not be overtaken by desire or annoyance or anything like that, and have the patience to stick to it. So it's with everything. It's not just the anger, but attachment as well.
Yeah. So that's why so patience needs to protect us from attachment too. That's right. So I heard somebody's voice say something.
Oh, yes. If I can share something that I thought was really profound. A teacher of mine said that you can really test the strength of your bodhicitta or love by the amount of patience you have.
That's right. That's right. This patience is the foundation of that. That's for sure. Yeah. So, this is our end of the class. So what's some of the takeaways for us today? Well, we know there are 4 forces. You won't even recollect what they are. And you know that they can affect the 4 parts of a non-virtuous act. We know how that effect takes place. Each part directly opposes the other. It's like you can't have, like love and kindness opposes hatred. Patience opposes, what do you call this? Anger, of course, but also that thing to be in a hurry, to quick. So you can't have both at the same time. Each one's a natural opponent to the other. So if we engage in these practices of purification, what we are opposing that we will do these actions again, the actions we've done in the past, we purify them, we sort of stop them, we hinder them. And it's important to be patient in every, in a whole lot of work.
Eddie, there's just a comment here, so with the rejoicing and the gratitude, so in the word rejoice, the word joy, yeah. And Min's just pointed out that in the word gratitude is great attitude.
Oh, we've got some Dharma students here. That's right. Very good. Very good. So in summary, this is just the way it is. Our future depends upon the actions that we take in the present. What we don't want to happen is for the actions that we've done in the past that are unskillful to, cross the present and influence our future. So again, we look at the purification, the 4 remedies, merit and rejoicing, and the importance of patience. So we can dedicate.
Can I have a question?
Yes, Ben. Yep.
Okay. Because the word came up, I was just kind of curious what you think of the word evil, because it came up in one of the slides. And the reason I ask is I'm so hesitant when there's such a polarity, like a holy evil, it's just there's so much duality in that, that by that contrast is so jarring for me. So I just wanted some clarification on that, or what other people thought.
So
Eddie, stop the screen share while you're giving the answer.
So with those words, there's another word like I had, like sin is another one brought across from the Christian presentation. So it could be useful or it could be a hindrance. It really depends upon oneself. So when you get that sort of jarring sensation, like I said, this could be useful or it could be problematic. It can become very useful if you look at the word and look at how it's affecting you, and try and work out how am I hearing this word to have this type of effect on me. So what I'm getting at here is to try and approach this using wisdom, because something's interesting happening, isn't it? Something's interesting going on here.
Yeah, because for me, I would prefer the word misdeeds instead of evil, because I feel like there's a kind of judgment on the word evil, but if you perform a misdeed, it's probably because you're misguided, or there's a misperception. So I don't know, that's kind of why I pointed that out. I think.
So,
and also the word evil and sin have, for me, a real connotation of inherence, of being permanent and unchangeable.
Yeah, and so that's the good part, because once you get that, now you have the appearance of inherent existence. That's what you want, to work against it. That's why it's very beneficial if you're prepared to work with it. There's another chapter where we talk about the evil gone realms. Right? That's what these are, the evil gone realms.
Eddie, I have a comment. The
Yep.
word evil to me is useful because it seems to signify very intense misdeeds. It's a category of misdeeds on the extreme
Yeah.
end of the scale.
This is so what I'm encouraging. I actually just recently I had a similar type thing. I used a word in one of our studies as a way of helping you. However, if a person of mixed race, when you heard that word, like that's very jarring, you know. And what happened, of course, was the person who heard it lost the
triggered.
rest of the teaching. You know, it's like the same about the word evil. It's like, whoa, right? So now the mind, like, it's this funny thing that starts to happen. So we have to work to our capacity. So if it becomes sort of like overwhelming and you get all this weird stuff coming up and go, no, like, I prefer to use like the word unskillful deed, right, rather than evil, because when I hear the word, it seems like if I hear the word like anger, it's evil. You go, it's got, like Miffy said, it seems to have an inherent existence. Right? So like I said, that can be seen, like it's not good if you grasp at it to have inherent existence. Then, of course, it all falls apart. It's problematic. But to actually have the experience of it appearing inherently existent is great. Because that's what you want. You want it to have it go, here it is.
Oh, so you mean like it helps
No.
to identify the target of inherent existence?
Yeah, that's right. And it's arising in dependence upon this word. Now that's something I can work with in terms of the wisdom aspect. But like in terms of the merit aspect, in terms of the method aspect, you might go, well, like that, I'm going to use unskillful deeds. Is that okay, Mindy? You sort of get what I'm getting at?
Yes, thanks for pointing that out.
It does. But once again, you've got to look at yourself as the student who's engaging in this work.
Yeah, I guess for me, like, I don't believe in like an inherent evil because I believe in like yeah, like a natural goodness for everyone, because I mean that's what we talk about in Buddha nature, that every being has that. So it's just like I feel like the word evil is like so overused without deconstructing it. But I appreciate how like this discussion is going.
Yeah. So so like Susan has pointed out, so one side it's very useful. On the other side, it could be not so useful, especially if it's grasped inherently. Anyway, well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Min, Susan, thank you very much. And Shayla, thank you for being a wonderful host and helping us work through this thing. I'll just get us back to the slide and we'll do our dedications. So again, remembering that we do not exist inherently. Our existence is dependent, especially upon name and consciousness. And every action that we engage in that has no inherent existence either, it's dependent arising. If the causes of anything are dependent arising, the results are dependent arising. We seek Buddhahood for the benefit of others. Let's dedicate to that goal. So due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. And may the jewel, supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow, and may that born have no decline but increase forevermore, such that as long as space abides and as long as sentient beings abide, may we too remain to dispel the suffering of all sentient beings. So we've come to the end of our class. I want to say thank you all of you for attending it and making my life meaningful and useful. So thank you once again, and I hope to see you in the near future. Okay, then.
Thank you, Eddie.